Imagine this. It's Christmas Eve, and your daughter-in-law calls to announce that 18 of her relatives are arriving at your house, and she never even asked if it was okay. That was exactly the moment my heart skipped a beat. I'm Linda, 68 years old, and I had just settled into my beautiful new beach house in Florida. It wasn't just a retirement dream, it was a peaceful escape and a smart investment. I'd planned to rent it out during the high season, enjoying the quiet when it was empty, and welcoming paying guests when the calendar demanded it. Life was supposed to be simple, calm, and under my control. Then the phone rang. Angela, my daughter-in-law, sounded bubbly and confident, as if she were announcing the event of the century. "Mom, we're all coming to stay for Christmas," she chirped. 18 people arriving Christmas Eve and staying through New Year's. "Can you have everything ready?" I froze, staring at the pristine white cabinets and granite countertops that I had spent months admiring. 18 people, 8 days, peak season Christmas. My mind instantly ran the numbers: lost rental income, extra groceries, laundry cleaning, and the inevitable chaos of nearly 24 people navigating my carefully curated home. I could practically hear the tiny footsteps tracking sand across the hardwood floors and see the little hands leaving fingerprints on my spotless windows. Angela's voice, light and cheerful, landed in the room like a snowflake on a bonfire. "Mom, it's going to be such a warm, wonderful Christmas warmth. Not if I let this slide. Not if I allowed 18 people to turn my quiet retreat into an 8-day whirlwind with zero consultation." I realized then that I had a choice. I could either let them steamroll me, or I could turn this unexpected invasion into an opportunity, a chance to establish boundaries, teach a little lesson in responsibility, and still preserve the holiday spirit. So I stood there, coffee in hand, looking out over the sparkling waves, and started plotting. I would need to calculate the cost, consider every potential inconvenience, and design a plan so thorough that Angela and her family could hardly refuse, yet one that respected my time, my space, and my investment. This is where my story begins. The moment I recognized the bold assumptions my family had made, weighed the financial and emotional stakes, and prepared to turn a surprise takeover into a lesson in respect, fairness, and maybe a little holiday magic. The moment I hung up the phone, my mind went into overdrive. 18 people, 8 days, Christmas week, the busiest, most expensive week of the year. I could almost hear the chaos before it even arrived. Crumbs on my hardwood floors, sand tracked across the living room, tiny shoes thumping up and down the stairs, children shouting while adults shouted over each other, all of them weaving in and out of my carefully arranged furniture. My pristine kitchen, a battlefield waiting to happen. My living room. A temporary nursery cafeteria and hotel lobby rolled into one. Angela, bless her enthusiasm, didn't seem to realize the magnitude of what she had just proposed. She called again, almost immediately, instructing me on room assignments as if she were orchestrating a military campaign. "Mom, the master bedroom is for my parents. They'll need the privacy," she said breezily. "The kids will need 2 guest rooms, and we'll figure out the rest." She even tossed in a suggestion about groceries. Just a few $100s should cover it for everyone. My jaw nearly dropped. A few $100s for 18 people for 8 days. My weekly grocery budget for one person hovered around $150. I knew it was time to get serious. I called my longtime accountant, Patricia, who had been helping me manage my finances for over a decade. "Patricia, hypothetically, I started trying to sound casual, though my pulse was racing. If I were to charge 18 people for 8 days over Christmas, what would be a fair rate?" Patricia laughed. "Linda, there's nothing hypothetical about that tone. We're talking prime beachfront property during peak season. Even a modest estimate, you're looking at a minimum of $5,000, and that doesn't include groceries, cleaning, or utilities. That's a very conservative number." I paused, letting it sink in. $5,000. That's what it would cost to host Angela's family properly, or more accurately, what they would cost me if I did it for free. That wasn't just money. It was control, peace, and the right to say no. And that's when I started plotting. If they were going to treat my home like a free hotel, I would run it like one. I ordered a small portable printer, printed professional-looking invoice templates, and created a detailed menu and service list. Cleaning fees, resort-style charges, additional services, it all had to be laid out in black and white. Every detail of their stay would be clearly defined, and there would be no room for assumptions. I even began imagining the day they arrived, the shock on their faces when they saw invoices in hand, the subtle shift in power, as they realized this wasn't my generosity being tested, it was my business acumen. It wasn't revenge, it was setting boundaries, enforcing respect, and maintaining fairness, all wrapped in a holiday bow. By the end of the day, my mind had transformed Angela's bold assumption into a blueprint. I wasn't just thinking about logistics and money, I was planning a lesson in responsibility, accountability, and the subtle art of asserting oneself without creating unnecessary conflict. For the first time since the call, I felt a spark of anticipation. This was going to be interesting, educational, and in a way empowering not just for me, but potentially for Angela as well. Christmas Eve had arrived, and with it came the chaos I had been anticipating. 5 cars pulled into the circular driveway, spilling out children laughing suitcases the size of small refrigerators, and adults carrying every manner of bag basket and cooler. They stormed into my home like it was a hotel they had booked for free, and for a moment, I simply watched, sipping my coffee, imagining the whirlwind that was about to descend on my pristine house. Angela, her parents, her sister, and the kids all came in laughing and talking over each other. Shoes slipped off, bags dropped, and the youngest immediately began a sprint across my newly polished floors. The kitchen smelled faintly of leftover coffee from my morning, and the living room looked ready to host a small army. And then, with all the serenity I could muster, I smiled and began my welcome routine. But there was one crucial difference I had prepared. Hidden behind my sweet smile were printed invoices clearly itemized for each person. I handed the first one to Angela herself, noting the master suite charges, resort-style fees, cleaning, and service extras. The total for their 8-day stay, $100. Faces froze. A quiet shock rippled through the room. Angela turned red, her carefully rehearsed cheer faltering as she scanned the pages. This can't be serious," she stammered. "Oh, it's very serious," I replied lightly, letting my calm demeanor do half the work. "You requested accommodations for 18 people during peak season. I've provided exactly what you asked for premium rooms, all amenities and service like a proper vacation rental." For a moment, I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They tried to negotiate. "We're family. We can't pay you." "Mom," Angela protested, her voice rising. I remained calm. "Family doesn't mean taking advantage. Family respects one another and honors boundaries. I love you all, but that doesn't mean my home and time are free for the asking." The tension was thick. I watched as Angela's father and sister whispered to each other, calculating, realizing that this wasn't a game or a bluff. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to accept the reality respecting my rules meant paying for what they had requested. One by one, they acknowledged the invoice. The lesson in fairness was sinking in. I didn't deny them access to the kitchen, but rules were clear. Everyone who cooked or used facilities took responsibility for cleaning. Break something, replace it. Leave dishes, lose privileges. I handed them laminated guidelines, smiling as I saw Angela bite her lip, reading through each rule carefully, finally understanding that running a household, even for family, requires structure. What followed was a mix of chaos and comedy. Children tried to sneak chips from the pantry, the teenagers debated who got which room, and Angela's cousin tripped over a suitcase, narrowly missing my new rug. Through it all, I remained the orchestrator, observing their reactions, ensuring boundaries were respected, but never letting the humor of the situation go unnoticed. By the time dinner preparations began, the family had shifted from outrage to reluctant cooperation. They had learned the hard way that respect, fairness, and planning were not optional even in a familial setting. I felt a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge or being mean. It was about teaching accountability in a gentle, firm way. The audience watching this unfold would feel that satisfying blend of justice and amusement. The invaders humbled the host, triumphant, and the subtle humor of family chaos perfectly captured. Angela and her relatives were learning, sometimes clumsily, that respect and boundaries could coexist with love and togetherness. And as I watched them finally settle into the house according to the rules, I allowed myself a small, private smile of victory. After the initial lesson in fairness had settled, I took a deep breath and decided it was time to transform the tension into something magical, a real Christmas celebration. The house still buzzed with energy, but now I was in control of channeling it. First, I turned to the children. I divided them into small teams, assigning tasks for decorating the tree. Some handled lights, others ornaments, and a few were in charge of garland. Tiny hands hung baubles with delight, and I could see the pride in their eyes as they stepped back to admire their work. For once, chaos had a purpose. Next, the adults were assigned their responsibilities. Angela's parents helped organize sleeping arrangements, her sister coordinated meals, and everyone pitched in to tidy up spaces as they went. I watched Angela closely, gently guiding her to take a leadership role. She was learning the subtle art of planning, making lists, checking off tasks, coordinating grocery runs, and keeping an eye on timelines. She began to understand what it truly took to orchestrate a large family gathering. Within a few hours, the transformation was remarkable. The house, once on the verge of being overrun, had become warm and welcoming. The tree stood proudly in the living room, perfectly lit, and decorated, a symbol not only of the season, but of cooperation. The kitchen, though bustling, was orderly, and everyone seemed to understand their role in maintaining the flow. Laughter replaced earlier tension, and I could see genuine smiles where moments ago there had been apprehension. It was during this orchestrated chaos that the family collectively began to reflect on the lessons of the day. Memories of Rose. My late sister-in-law, who had previously managed our Christmas celebrations, surfaced. Rose had spent decades planning every detail with patience and foresight. Suddenly, Angela and the others recognized that hosting a holiday gathering wasn't effortless magic, it was experience, effort, and responsibility. They began to appreciate the thought and care that had gone into our past celebrations and the effort required to create something memorable now. I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Not only were boundaries respected, but the emotional connection within the family was also strengthened. Angela, once flustered and overwhelmed, started to shine. She realized that communication and planning were key, that every family member could contribute meaningfully, and that her assumptions about just showing up had consequences. I was proud, not in a boastful way, but quietly, as I observed her growth and adaptability. For the audience watching this story unfold, the moment is deeply relatable. There's warmth, humor, and a sense of accomplishment intertwined with the gentle reminder that structure and respect are essential to maintain harmony even among loved ones. Boundaries don't diminish love, they enhance it. Cooperation doesn't remove fun, it enriches it. And leadership, when exercised thoughtfully, can empower others rather than alienate them. By the end of the evening, the house resonated with a sense of accomplishment. A holiday that had threatened to descend into chaos was now memorable, not just for the gifts and decorations, but for the connections strengthened and lessons learned. Angela had learned practical skills in planning and coordination. The family had learned humility and appreciation. And I had demonstrated the strength, intelligence, and patience required to guide them. Together, we had turned potential disaster into a meaningful, joyful Christmas. By the time Christmas Day came to a close, the house was alive with laughter, warmth, and the satisfaction of a family working together. I, Linda, settled into my favorite chair by the window, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the waves and reflected on the day. Boundaries and self-respect hadn't diminished the love in the room, they had enhanced it. The family's appreciation for one another had grown because respect had been clearly defined and maintained. There were several lessons etched deeply into my mind, and I hope my family had absorbed them too. First, knowing when to say no and setting firm boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. Without them, even the closest family can overstep, sometimes unintentionally. Second, clear communication eliminates assumptions and prevents unnecessary pressure. Angela's original plan had seemed thoughtful to her, but without asking, it created stress for everyone involved. Third, sharing responsibility and collaborating strengthens family bonds. When each person contributes, the workload becomes manageable and the joy of accomplishment multiplies. And finally, organization and planning turn potential chaos into memorable experiences. A little foresight goes a long way, especially when orchestrating a large holiday gathering. Before anyone left, I handed Angela a carefully prepared guide for next year timelines, budgets, task lists, and vendor contacts. "I want you to learn to plan," I told her gently. "Wishing isn't enough. Preparation is what makes a holiday run smoothly." I watched her eyes widen with understanding and a mix of relief and determination. It was a gift that went beyond presents. It was a roadmap for success and a gentle nudge toward responsibility. As I looked around at my family, smiling, talking, and sharing small, quiet moments of gratitude, I realized something important. Family is about love, yes, but it's also about respect, accountability, and mutual effort. The strongest bonds are built not just on emotion, but on fairness and cooperation. If this story resonated with you, remember to subscribe to Real Her Stories, share this video, like it, and comment below with your own experiences. Who knows? The lessons learned here might inspire your family to create a Christmas that's not only joyful, but meaningful, organized, and full of respect for everyone involved. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself and your family is the clarity and confidence to run your home holidays and life with wisdom and love. Dingy.